Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike the Cranky Fan, and we are back to discuss the Giants' three-win season as it stands now with a 45-33 victory over the Colts for the shoe.
Yeah, Giants lose 45-33. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Honestly,
And
like
we're gonna get to everything. The Giants fall from first pick in the 2025 draft. A gift given to them by the Las Vegas Raiders, now down to fourth, and that can have tremendous consequences, obviously. But first, let's just talk about the game. Cranky, you said you weren't going to watch this game. What happened?
I wasn't, and I was poolside in Tampa. Nice day, 75 degrees. Had my non-alcoholic drink, and all of a sudden I got an alert on my phone that the Giants are up, and they're up again. I'm like, son of a bitch! Now I have to pay attention to this thing. Head over to a bar to watch the pregame before the Lightning game with some buddies, and it was on there, and my friends saw something they haven't seen in 35 years. Me rooting against the Giants. And that is there's nothing sadder that can be as a fan when you are rooting against them for the future. And unfortunately, that is the awkward position I was in. Giants play one of their best games they played in years. And I can't enjoy it for 1 minute because I have bigger things on my mind, bigger fish to fry. That left me disgusted with myself and disgusted with this whole situation, how we can't do anything right. And we're going to talk about why that happened and some crazy conspiracy theories I have that may not be so conspiratorial.
So first, let's stick with the game. I understand. I sympathize. I feel it too. But I'm not gonna tell anybody else how to fan. But me myself personally, I can rationalize that was not what I wanted to happen. But I can't help but smile when I see all three wide receivers score a touchdown. You know what I mean? Like it's nice seeing the Giants do well, and I will always, in the moment, smile at stuff like that. But I full well know that like this is not going the way that I had hoped. I really hoped that we would lose this game. I had some. Next week playing against the Eagles, I think it's lofty to think that the Giants could beat the Eagles backups, especially since the Giants are essentially playing with 70% backups as it is. So
Well, it's an interesting thing to think about because, if the Eagles are thinking longer term, it's in their best interest that the Giants win. They don't
sure,
want they don't want a potential, franchise quarterback coming into their division. They
they're
rather make it as
already
hard as
dealing
possible.
with Jaden Daniels being a problem in the division. Dak
Sure.
Prescott just got a big contract. That's not necessarily good news for them. My feelings on Dak Prescott are what they are, but it's nevertheless he is a top half of the league quarterback without a doubt.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
it would be in their best interest to have one cakewalk team in the division since Washington will no longer be that team. So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
And they are a team that in the past has in week 17s or week 18s, whatever it is, benching guys right in the middle of games. Just they don't care about outcomes of games.
So, a couple of things that I thought were nice touches to this game, and I understand this. Joe Flacco is essentially Aaron Rodgers light at this point. Um, but that being said, it's not like Flacco wasn't throwing lasers in this game. Um, there were some bright spots. I enjoyed Dane Belton's interception. Drew Phillips had an interception. We had two picks in this game. Like I had mentioned already, touchdowns by all three wide receivers. Malik Neighbors had two, both of which were really, really impressive. Darius Slayton had an impressive one. Wandale had an impressive touchdown. Tyrone Tracy had an impressive game. This was sort of, if you were, I don't know, this
I
looked like the team was missing consistency in a quarterback. If you were to watch this game in a vacuum.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing all around the league too that we're getting into week 17 and week 18. I seeing a lot of worn down and tired defenses. Like even this
Yeah.
Monday night game today. I mean, you know, Detroit is supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, and they can't stop San Francisco.
Hmm.
A banged up San Francisco team. And I think we're seeing a lot of defenses that this season is long and it's getting longer. And without all the stuff we said back in April, August, you don't do the fundamentals in training camp and stuff. And, I think you're just seeing defenses kind of just running out of gas.
Yeah, I
And
would
I think,
agree with that.
and this game kind of felt like the result of that.
And it's not like the Giants defense was not gassed. I mean, they were horrendous as well. This might have been Deontay Banks' worst game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very, very nearly could be. But at the same time, Alec Pierce looked pretty damn good in this game too.
Yeah, yeah.
And just isolated, Alec Pierce looked good in my opinion.
Grump, one thing I want to ask you, we were texting during the game.
Mhm.
You had some thoughts about Joe Flacco as kind of entering the mix for what do we do, potentially next year. And I know we're going to have the quarterback discussion in the proper time, but is Joe Flacco kind of entered your attention span as a temporary person to maybe consider?
I think that he falls into a specific tier of people that I'm considering. So, not to go off on a tangent because this is going to definitely be a future episode.
Mm-hmm.
No questions asked. So I don't want to get too much, but
Yeah,
this loss means the Giants now have to consider all possibilities.
right.
Whether or not Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders falls to them, trading up for Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, getting a Jalen Milroe or a Jackson Dart, skipping out and getting a big ticket free agent quarterback, getting a stopgap quarterback, getting a backup quarterback. I mean, there are no quarterbacks on this roster signed to 2025, and now falling from 1 to 4. Every single option is now on the table and must be planned for. And I
Even
think that
even DeVito?
DeVito is not signed next year. He's
Oh,
not on the roster next year.
okay.
Um, that means that every single option is on the table. And I think Flacco falls into that category of backup quarterback that could potentially start. Like this is a 1-year contract to me, Joe Flacco. And that's a guy who is an absolutely solid veteran presence in the locker room that can guide a young player, or even if you manage to get a Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, or maybe you think Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart are the guy, or Dylan Gabriel, whoever
Or
you think,
or
Carson
Beck
Beck,
or any of those guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
any of those guys. This is a guy that could start the year while the other guy sits behind him. So I think he falls into that category.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that this is the last year you really can consider Joe Flacco as being that guy, because once he hits 40, I really don't think you're going to. I
Agreed.
don't know what he wants at 40. You know what I mean? Like, he may not even be mentally available at 40.
Right.
So, but I think that he falls into that category. I don't know if he falls in that category for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just if I need, again, I'm trying to separate out the difference between a stopgap quarterback and a bridge quarterback. A bridge quarterback to me is, I'm going to sign somebody for a free agent for 2 years,
Yeah,
and then we'll get our quarterback in the future.
right,
To me, a stopgap is we have our future on the roster.
right.
We're just not ready to play him yet. So
Yeah,
I need somebody. I can't have a Tommy DeVito be that person where
no,
we're just throwing games away. I need someone who can you know you know even better than a Drew Lock. Just give me the potential to win a couple games, so we're not just 0-4 when the new guy comes in.
yeah. I would say in that category, he's behind somebody like Jacoby Brissett. I think is a
Mm-hmm.
better stopgap guy that can be both a very valuable backup in the room, and also if you need him to start week 1, it's not the worst choice in the universe.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Okay. So that's a
Um,
little tease. That's a little tease for a future conversation once the season's mercifully over.
Yeah, and I apologize if this episode is a little bit more free form, but most of my work has been preparing for that episode that we're gonna do.
I'm about to go real freeform, baby. So I'm
Yeah,
ready.
so about this game itself, I don't know. I have. I'm gonna let you go crazy because I think you're more the conspiracy theorist than I am. But I'm
Yes.
gonna tease into it because I feel like the worst the worst characteristic that I think John Mara has is that he is in the position of an owner in which The long-term vision is sort of your acorn. You know what I mean? Like, you're the owner. You get to be there forever. So you get to build the long-term vision any way you want. The last thing an owner should be, especially an owner of a franchise that has season tickets sold into infinity right now. You don't have to worry about jersey sales. You don't have to worry about filling seats. You don't have to worry about selling tickets. The last thing you should be is short-sighted. And I think that John Mara has a tendency to let his emotions pull him in the direction of short-sightedness from time to time. And I honestly think that between the fucking planes and between the
The
open criticism to his family, the
the product on the field too. I
the
mean, that's a
product
part of
on the
it.
field, promises that were made, failed contracts. I think all of that was making the lid to the pot boil and bounce around. And the last thing was the nonstop reminder that the Giants would be the first team to lose X amount of games at home in a season. And I
Mhm.
really don't think that that sat well with him. And I'd been wondering this for a while. Like, is he. Because to me, when you make the decision to bench and then ultimately release Daniel Jones, you're going to wear this bad season, albeit the 100th. It's a bad season anyway. You know what? Wear it like Mark Davis's haircut. Just get it
Oof.
over with, man. It looks bad. You can style it if you want to, but it's still going to look bad styled. You might as well let it grow and then get it recut by somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing. And
Yeah.
instead, this was a day in which I think John Mara really wanted his hair styled. His Mark
Yeah.
Davis haircut needed to be a mohawk or something. That's kind of how I feel. I don't think that the idea that the Giants in their 100th season would be the first team in NFL history to lose 9 home games, which would be every single one, which by the way has happened. It's just that this year is year, what is it, 3 of the extended season. So to me, that's like a baby thing to get upset about, especially in all the
If
nonsense you've already survived. This is like going to
I
the gym 6 straight days and then eating an entire chocolate cake on day 7 to undo all your hard work. Why? Why the fuck did you do that? You were there. You were right
yeah.
there. Anyway, that's my thought. I don't know. Go ahead. You go
Yeah,
nuts.
I want to take this and I want to run with it a lot further too, because the first thing about the owner, of all the stakeholders involved in a football team, and this talks about owners, coaches, players, fans, and media. The media. There's really only two that are always going to be there forever: the owner and the fans. They're the ones that, through thick and thin, they're not going anywhere. They're not going to get fired. They're not going to quit. You know, Players come and go, coaches come and go, general managers come and go. But so when you have, again, to your point, if you have that horizon of forever, you have to look at everything big picture, and you have to have a logic, and you have to be consistent in your logic. I am a process person. The way I when at work is I'm a computer consultant. Everything with me is process. The way we're going to do this is we're going to do it A, then B, then C. Because if we don't do that, D, E, and F are not going to work. We can't bounce around all over the place. And the exact same thing holds with trying to rebuild this mess of a football team. So, you know, I think I'm going to take your thought and I'm going to take it to a little bit possibly of a conspiracy theory, but I don't think I'm crazy either. And it also doesn't mean I'm not wrong. I think that all of this, the thin skinnedness of Mara, you know, it's obvious he doesn't like any of this. He doesn't like the product on the field. He doesn't like the fact there's planes. He doesn't like the fact that every fucking Hard Knocks clip is on your Instagram reel every seven
Who
seconds of
would?
him. But no one, of course, no one would. It's not, but I think the successful leaders ignore that. The successful leaders have a plan, they execute their plan. And when they made that decision to bench and get rid of Daniel Jones, not only was it a decision that was made that we are doing this to think about the future, we understand what the expectations are for the rest of the year, the potential consequences, but there also had to be buy-in and acceptance for everybody. This was not I don't think this was something that Mara proposed to Joe Shane and Brian Dable. I think it's the opposite. I think Joe Shane and Brian Dable, working together, had a plan and said, based on the way the contract is structured, it's, based on the way this season is going, based on the way this roster is, based upon everything, our best move to potential long-term success is to no longer play him, to risk that injury, and as a side effect, we're going to put ourselves in a position to have the most options of our discretion and our decision making going forward. And I think this was discussed with Mara. I think this was agreed at Mara. I also think, taking a step further, that it was all agreed upon that this might go potentially on the surface will look really ugly the rest of the year. We don't have a capable backup quarterback. We're going to play Tommy DeVito. Guys are going to go on the injured reserve that may necessarily be fighting through it if this team is contending. We are going to look bad. But there were assurances made. No matter how bad this looks, Joe Shane, I have the confidence in you to start rebuilding this roster after week 18. Brian Dable, I have the confidence in you to take this roster and put this team in the best position to succeed going forward. That's all great. I signed off on it. Grump signed off on it. A lot of you listen, but who believe us agree with it also. This is where I have a problem. And I sense it as soon as I saw those scores and started watching that game. I'm putting this on Mara. I think the thin-skinnedness of Mara has done the thing that I fear the most, how this team could be rebuilt. You're abandoning process. You are letting emotion, you're letting public embarrassment, you are letting your thin-skinnedness get in the way of your plan. I honestly think he spoke to Dable and said, this can't keep happening. That doesn't mean you have to win this week or else, but I don't like the results of something we all agreed upon. And I think we need to make a serious effort. Because, quite honestly, there's a difference in this. You just watch this team with a spring in their step this week than last week. But as we always say, players don't tank. Coaches that have assurances that they will have a job and are in it for a bigger picture, they could tank. They could do things. Case in point, when we benched Daniel Jones, who became our quarterback? It wasn't Drew Lock, the backup. It was third string Tommy DeVito under the guise of, let's see what he can do. Let's see what he can do in early November? No, that's because you are deliberately trying to lose. Tanking without saying you're tanking. So why the hell isn't Tommy DeVito playing this week? When you have caused so much damage, public relations, sticking with your plan, which everybody thinks is in your best interest to do. Why is he not playing now? Why is the better quarterback playing? With the potential of, you're flirting with potential draft disaster. And guess what? It happened. And I preface everything I say where nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed we'd end up with the number one pick. Nothing is guaranteed we're going to draft a Hall of Fame quarterback. Nothing is guaranteed. But you want to put yourself with the best odds and the best potential for things to happen. And to do that, I honestly think, even though Dable had assurances he'll be back, and that's my opinion on that, and I think I'm right with that, I think something happened where he had to course correct and make it at least palatable. And when palatable comes, you could potentially accidentally win, which is happening.
Yeah, which we've been saying this whole time is that we wanted games to be one fluke play away, and in this game, the Giants had a kickoff return for a touchdown, and that game-ending interception. I mean, Flacco and the Colts were in desperation mode, and he just airmailed one throw, went right into Drew Phillips' arms. So.
Yeah. Now that's my one theory. What happened? If that didn't happen, I'm sorry. Then I have to give Brian Dable a fart. I mean, again, players don't tank, and I was I was pissed at the universe yesterday. I mean, I was pissed at Malik Neighbors for being selfish. I was, you name it. I was irrational, and I get that. I understand it. That's why we don't do this show right after the game, because I would have sounded probably like an asshole. So Grump got the asshole text, and he, as he usually does, keeps me in check. But I, and also, I don't want to hear Dable did a good job because the team doesn't want to quit. They haven't quit. They're still trying hard. This again is my lens, and Grump, you tell me if I'm crazy, but it seemed like I saw a lot of guys that were playing for their jobs and playing for individual accolades more than they were for winning. So if that's true or not, that doesn't really matter. But my point is, I don't think it's because Dable's doing such a great job of keeping this team wanting to play and not quitting. But so my point is that, again, the decision to play Drew Lock to me is one of those subtle things you can do to maximize the potential of not losing, of not winning. And I think if Dable has that assurance that he's going to be back and he may be part of this rebuild, which means back in 2025 and beyond, you got to think long term. And to me, I just think that was a mistake, and it potentially could bite us.
I I will address a couple of things in there.
Yeah.
I think that I completely agree with you in that this was not an exhibit as to Brian Dable's ability to keep a team invested in a lost season. I don't think it's not an example of that either. I think that, you know, remaining, I don't know. I think that the team holding things together this several weeks now would be probably the better evidence of that than this one individual game in which they happened to win against a team playing with their backup quarterback. Do you know what I'm saying? So like I agree that I don't think that that's what that should be cited as an example of. I think that there is some level of players playing for jobs, and I think my mind immediately goes. Excuse me. My mind immediately goes to Drew Lock. I don't know if that's correct or incorrect, but I mean, this is a guy that does have everything to lose. I mean, he took a shot coming here knowing that there was a chance that Daniel Jones could be moved on from, and he has looked bad, and that's entirely his fault. He has individually looked bad, and he needed to do something, and I'm sure he knows that. You know what I mean? Like, the Giants did not go to him right away, and he didn't get the opportunity to come in relief of Daniel Jones and make the team look good and then, boost his own value. He didn't get that opportunity. And in my opinion, you can say that was due to the tank. He hadn't shown anything in a Giants uniform that shows he deserved to start over Tommy DeVito at that point. And I'm not talking about Tommy DeVito's win over the Green Bay Packers last year in a game that didn't matter. I'm talking about summer. I'm talking about spring. DeVito outplayed him. But nevertheless, I think you're probably right. I think that if you're trying to win, you go to Drew Lock probably first. That's the guy you went out and you signed and you gave, whatever, what was it, $6 million to or whatever. But where I'm probably going to disagree with you is I don't know. It's not even a full disagree because I'm 50-50 with you here.
Okay.
I don't think coaches ever tank, and I think that's what makes what Doug Peterson did in Philadelphia outrageous, is that he clearly was trying to lose a game, and when it wasn't working, he started benching second stringers for third stringers in the middle of a game, which I don't ever remember happening. I'm sure a history buff could point out a game that I don't know about or whatever, but to me, there is, I know it's a business, but this is an entertainment league. And while the job is not to entertain me, the fan, I know that the NFL does not want that on TV. They don't want that. And for good reason, because I don't want to watch that. And I think it's bad on that level. Now, if a GM is saying we're going to tank and we're going to release X player and Y player and Z player and we're going to bench this player because we're moving on from at the end of the year, and you set up a roster on game day that has no chance of winning, that's a different story. And I think a coach should be coaching to win. But um, so where I kind of disagree with you is in that. But now again, you make a very good point. I do believe that the bench and release of Daniel Jones was a three-way agreement. I do not believe that it was two or one of the three people. I believe it was all three: John Mara, Joe Shane, Brian Dable. That this was not the long-term vision that was best for the team, and therefore it was best to get ahead of it at this point, especially considering the injury clause. I
It's
say
a radical.
especially because even without the injury clause, it's a rational football decision.
It's a pretty radical decision too. I mean, how many teams have you seen that this early?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, sometimes okay, it's week 15. Okay, we're gonna like just look at Atlanta. They make the move from Cousins on to Penix. When do they do that?
Mm-hmm.
Mid December.
Yeah.
I mean, we did this early November.
And if you ask me, the conspiracy theorist in me says that they wanted to do it earlier, but again, this is probably me overthinking, but I'm going to put the blame on John Mara, wanting to give Daniel Jones a real shot at getting a win, and waited for the Carolina game in Germany to do it. And that they were going to make that his last game because it was a real shot that they were going to have a winning based on the way the schedule was structured and the way the team was health-wise and all that other stuff. They had a real shot of winning, and they thought maybe, we could just get him his one win and, move on from there. And, you can make the argument that a win would make it harder to bench him, but it's hard to bench your starting quarterback that, you know what I mean? It's a tough decision anyway. Again, I go back to wearing the season like it's Mark Davis's haircut.
Yeah.
So you just tough it out and you let people call you names because if you do everything right and you're a competitive team 365 days from now, they will remember that they called you names, but they will not care anymore.
The thing is, I've been a Giant fan now since 1979. That's a
Gross.
long, long time. Gross. Four Super Bowls, but it's not a bad too. But the point is, I have been a Giant fan for a long, long, long time. I've watched a lot of good football and bad football. I consider myself a diehard, passionate Giant fan. I don't care one shit what one person tells me this year, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Giants suck. I know. We're tanking. Moved on. Aren't you embarrassed? No. We've made a decision to move on. I'm past that. I know what we are. I know what we're doing. I don't care. And I'm a fan. I'm a if I'm not financially invested, I am emotionally invested. I just don't understand why the guy who's financially invested also, who ultimately, all I do is it's just my emotions. At the end of the day, I have my well-being, my financial future is not, based on this team. The Mariners have so much more invested than me that you have to just put away because somebody flies a plane, because you're a joke on Jimmy Fallon, because you're memeable, because who gives a shit? No one cares at the end of the day. So it's not good, and it worries me in the going forward as he gets older, as he gets more thin-skinned, as he gets, don't send me hate mail. It becomes more like Biden, just more and more older, and the cognizant skills start going down. No one's going to tell him no. There's nobody in the organization that's the contrary, other than, I guess, Tish, but is he really? So
we haven't seen that to date.
we
Why should we believe that?
Exactly. So this is a much bigger red flag for me, going forward, that can just ever be repaired with sane, rational, thought process and logic and process. I'm very worried right now. I'll be very honest.
Yeah, and so to kind of finish my point here is where I agree with you is that if this was a decision by Mara, which I crazy thought is yes, to demand more of Brian Dable in this game and try to win so that they don't hold that record and whatever.
Or just don't look like a pile of shit out there.
Yeah,
I mean, if you lose,
like it goes against everything that you agreed upon as a trio, and it just
yeah.
it's It's the only thing that makes sense to me is that Brian Dable is coaching for his job, where weeks ago, albeit probably 10 weeks ago, he was assured that this season is falling apart, but you'll be back. Don't worry.
I thought for sure up until yesterday that his job was 100% safe. I thought they were going to execute this plan.
Me too.
We're all going to do it together. You're all going to be back. I think a lot of what the noise you heard was media barking and speculation and trying to read the face of Mara sitting in a box and all blah 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 blah.
And you know what? If Mara has a problem with this perception of him, he has only himself to blame, because that is the report of what happened to Joe Judge. Is that Joe Judge was told he was safe, and then 2 weeks later he was dead.
Yeah. And something, and we were talking about like job security and things. If you potentially won your way out of a chance to draft a franchise quarterback, and I'm not getting into,
Right.
are we bringing in Jesus Christ, or are we bringing in, Joe the Schmuck? The opportunity that buys, I go back to wins and hope. You just got hope, because this head coach and general manager have spent all of their capital. They don't have hardly any left. If you could say, well, we drafted Shador, or we drafted Cam Ward, or whoever it is, the losses next year will be palatable, because something's happening.
Right.
So that means you might be able to survive a bad 2025 and 2026. Now, if things break bad because you didn't put yourself in the best position to succeed, and the scenario of, well, a quarterback is not on our board right now. If we're drafting seventh and we're picking somebody, there's going to be no patience. Zero. It's going to be you're going to have the most disgusted fan base this offseason, and booze after the first punt opening day next year. And Dable won't survive. So to me, if this was the case, I think for job security, they should have just kept tanking, because I think he would have bought some more time.
Yeah. Yeah. To go back to the analogy, this is just like getting someone to try and fix the Mark Davis haircut before it's done growing out. You just
Yeah.
just deal with it. Like, you're already suffering. Just suffer it all the way through, and then find your way back out of it. Or you can kick and scream your way through quicksand. It's not going to end well.
The nightmare is over in 8 days. In
Yeah,
8 days,
exactly.
it's over. At 4:00, the final gun at the link, and we lose 25-3 to whoever the fuck the third string quarterback is for the Eagles. It's over.
Yeah, and
It's
so what?
over.
So what that you have to survive it for the whole offseason? Your whole offseason should be about getting back to work and fixing this shit. You have no problem showing off your rings to fans, so just show off your rings to counteract this bad season and move the fuck forward, or continue to live with it.
And any fan who's not half an asshole knows, like, oh, you didn't win a game at home this year. It's like, okay, we also tanked for 4 of those games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you really want to put that in the same category as the Lions that year, who didn't win a game, or the Saints of the 80s or something? I don't think it's exactly apples to apples in those situations.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. I'm a firm believer of learning. I have no problem in life screwing up, making mistakes, because
Yeah.
I am the kind of person that always looks back at what I did and be like, how could I have done that differently? And it really doesn't fucking matter. This bad season becomes an awful, forgettable footnote, an absolutely forgettable footnote, if you are able to build out of it smarter and better.
Hey, what were the Colts when they had Peyton Manning? They went to the AFC Championship team. How many times they won a Super Bowl with him? What was their record the year before they drafted Peyton Manning?
I have
You know,
no idea.
1-15. No one cares. No one remembers. They know that you suffered through this. You got your guy, and that all becomes a distant memory.
Yeah.
Now, this season could potentially be the biggest waste of time in my life. Longer than dating girls that never worked out, or what things I've tried to do there were fruitless outcomes. We suffered through a year of shit with okay, I'll let it pass because they're making a move to make ourselves better in the future. And again, none of this is guaranteed. They may get their guy at 9, and we can sit back and laugh in 3 years. But the odds decrease
Mm-hmm.
every time you drop from 1 to 2 to 3 to
So
4
the
to
thing
5.
is that like no one remembers a singular bad season. What people remember about teams being bad are teams that are perennially bad, like the
Mhm.
Jets, like the Browns. These are the teams that even your mom who doesn't pay attention to sports but sees a passing headline once every 6 months goes, "The Browns aren't they bad?" So who cares if
It
you
was
have a season where you don't win a single home game?
the Johnny
Nobody.
Carson test. The Johnny Carson test. If like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when they went 0-26 to start the season, how did the woman in Fort Wayne know about the Bucks? Because every night Johnny Carson on his monologue made fun of the Bucks. You don't want to become a cultural joke, and the equivalent today is being memed.
Yeah.
That's the I'm a joke on a Johnny Carson monologue is now
But
there's the meme.
I would even say that that's not even a relevant equivalent because meme culture is so like memes can be born and die before I even come across them, and I am not that far out of the loop. I admit I'm not
Mhm.
in the loop, but I'm not that far out of it. Johnny Carson is on every single night for weeks and weeks and weeks and
But
weeks.
you get my point though with
I
this.
do, but what I'm saying is that even if you wind up a meme, memes die very quickly. Like, get over it. John Mara throwing a chair meme, that meme is going to be used by people who don't know who John Mara is and don't know how football scores work. It doesn't
Right.
fucking matter. Get over it. Get bigger than that. You have Super Bowl rings on your fingers. You are a literal billionaire. I don't understand how I don't know. Doing this kind of shit, and again, we're operating that this is true, and it's definitely a conspiracy theory of our own. There's no evidence to support anything that we're saying.
But where there's smoke, there's usually fire
There
though.
is definitely smoke, but smoke is not evidence. But nevertheless, this is like having your pants pulled down, and oh, he's got a 1 inch Johnson. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
this is embarrassing behavior to be upset over a silly ESPN stat. Which,
well,
by
we,
the
we
way, would be a trivia question 25 years from now that nobody gets. Who is the team that lost 9 home games? No one will know the answer to that question.
who cares?
Exactly. That's what trivia is. Trivia is a whole bunch of who cares.
Yeah, especially something. It's not like again. We went to the 17 game schedule like 3 years ago. I
Yeah.
mean, we went from 14 to 16 games 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And come on,
And the
who
other thing
cares?
too is that if I'm at the trivia and everybody knows that and they all know me as the Giants guy and they laugh, but we went to a Super Bowl 4 years later and won it, do you think I'm going to care that they all point
Yeah,
at me and be like, ah,
I'll
Giants?
pull a
But
mare and show my 5 rings.
exactly. So it doesn't matter. This is what's so frustrating, is that it really does feel like this was, um, I don't know. Maybe I'm
You're
wrong.
ch-
Like, is there any evidence to suggest that John Mara really wanted this? Like, is there anything that I'm missing that like? Because to me, this is all my brain just going crazy.
yes, Drew Lock played, and they played to win.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, some of this is Malik Neighbors is going for personal records and stats. Tyron Tracy's trying to get personal stats. Those guys, they're going to be on the team going forward. And I know players don't tank, but is Malik Neighbors in his best interest in his career that he has the rookie record for most catches, or he puts the team in a position where he gets a quarterback that will elevate him? Because let me tell you something, and maybe because I'm a little bit down on Malik Neighbors overall for this year, just for a lot of different things. But when you play in New York, you become sports deity not by being great, by winning. There's a difference between Aaron Judge and Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter's won 5 rings. Aaron Judge has won none. There's a reason why Joe Namath is a big, will always be a big star in this town to the day he dies. He has a ring. It's why Patrick Ewing is not the big star in that deity where Mark Messier is. Messier won a ring. Ewing never didn't. And Malik Neighbors, Do you want to be known as? Do you want to be Eli Manning in this town, or do you want to be Odell Beckham in this town? That you were great, you built your brand, you were flashy, or you want to be known as an all-timer in this? So again, I'm not saying he should tank. He should personally tank, but I wouldn't. I just felt like it was a little more like the record for him was more important than everything else.
I'm going to disagree. I don't think that he's thinking about the record at all. He passed the record last week, not this week.
Well, what did he do today? There was something in him and
It's the
Tracy were all celebrating.
first time that two rookies got 1,000 yards. That's what I'm saying. I don't think he cared about that.
They had a thing. They had a thing after the game that was all over Giant Need
it was
social media.
Written on a piece of paper with a marker that they were told to stand in front of it. I don't think he. You know what I mean? I know what you're saying, but that to me sounds like that's the Giants PR team being like, guys, get together. We're gonna. Did you guys? I don't even know if they knew that.
All right, but my point being though, I guess is, and again, this is me just getting a little back to the irrationalist I was yesterday. Was like, it's in the best interest of this organization as a whole. I'm not going to single out a player or anything, but it's in the best interest of this organization to do what they can for sustainable long-term success.
Absolutely. But so aside from me disagreeing that he was aiming for a record in that game and that's it, I honestly think here's my thought, which is not necessarily glowing either. This is a young kid that is used to winning, that knows he's very good, and knows that he and his abilities have not been able to be put on display because of outside factors that he can't control. Now, we've talked about the drops. I'm not trying to gloss over that, but let's just put ourselves in the mind frame of a very competitive 21-year-old, 22-year-old.
Oh, if you watch him yesterday, and the one thing in my brain that was like the positive on the field was, this goddamn guy is really good.
Yeah.
And if we ever do get a quarterback, this guy will be special. And that's what was making me feel frustrated.
Outrageous catches, some great runs after the catch. All true. What I do think, though, is that there's a small part of him that probably thought, I need to put this on display because I'm thinking beyond this team. I may not want to be here in 3 years. I may want to be out because this place is dysfunctional. And A, that's a selfish thought. But B, he's not wrong. This place is dysfunctional. We can't seem to figure out how to win, and we have now proven that we can't seem to figure out how to lose right either.
If that thought is entering his brain, not even after year one, we are going to have a Beckham redux happening.
It's possible
at some point before he's gone.
I think that can be a passing thought if you put yourself in the mind frame of employment, which you're especially a good person to talk to about this just based on your job structure. When you have a stinker job, but if you do your job glowingly well, and you know that even if the output is bad, when you can walk away and be like, look, man, this is what I can show from that. There were things there that prevented me from putting out the best possible outcome, but here's what I was able to do. You know what I mean? Like you can put your mind frame in that, and I'm not disagreeing with what you said, but a small portion of your brain going that direction, I don't think is. I don't even know if it's avoidable.
I would agree more with you if the public perception was against him, but I think the public perception is he's actually better than he is. I think he gets a lot of benefit of the doubt.
Again, and I think that this is more anxious to prove that in case it gets to that. You know what I'm saying? Because he hasn't really he's had moments, like breakout moments, but he hasn't had a breakout game. Having 2 touchdowns in one game and the way in which he looked very good in this game. This felt more like a breakout game from him. Would you agree? Than the Cleveland game?
Oh yeah, for sure.
The Cleveland game, he was pretty outrageous as well.
I think that when I go back in 5 years now, I'm gonna think about that Cleveland game. I think because it was like a 1-man game. It's a shame he had the drop, but it was like, like oh my God, this guy's the offense right now.
I agree. But in in the moment in the game, I'm sure you're trying to not stack highlights, but stack, you know,
Yeah. I mean, the safest employee right now in this organization is probably Malik Neighbors,
yep,
more so than the GM, more than the coaches, more than pretty much anybody else on this roster. I mean, it's not inconceivable in the next year or two that Dexter Lawrence gets traded.
sure.
It's not inconceivable that Andrew Thomas could get traded.
Hmm.
There is no quarterback who's, he is the safest thing you have to having a job, probably next to Mara on this team.
Yep, yep, yeah. I would. You might as well call him Malik Mara. All right. So I am out of conspiracy theories. I'm about out
That,
of.
Thank you for let me get this off my chest too, because yesterday was a tough one. It was just like, you just like you're staring into the abyss. It's like, what we can't even fuck up the right way.
Here, I'm gonna preview into what's to come in the next several weeks here,
Yeah.
because while this is objectively bad from a franchise and organizational standpoint, and as a fan, I don't want that, but as me being me and just liking the offseason, like, what do
Mm-hmm.
we do, what if I do this, do I do this, and maybe I could do this and then this happens. I like that kind of puzzle matching, and this loss allowed my brain to just go bananas all day yesterday. So, like I said earlier, this puts every single QB option back on the table. Every single one has to be considered and game planned for. You have
Player,
to be ready
player,
for any one of these players.
player, and scenario. It's not just
Absolutely.
players; it's scenario too. So yeah,
Yeah. And I think that this opens up the conversation also of, do you keep Shane and Dable? And I'm sure that conversation, we've already discussed this. I'm sure that conversation has already taken place between Mara and Shane and Dable, and I'm pretty positive that they're safe. We know from evidence that doesn't mean squat, but also I think that the fact that you don't have a shot at a franchise quarterback may tip the scales in one direction or another. You know what I mean? Like, I think you could make the case that, with the assurance that you have either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, whether they were picking first or second, because they were picking second for quite a while, a number of weeks,
mm-hmm.
um, you can kind of talk yourself into being like, well, let's give Brian Dable and Joe Shane their chance at a franchise quarterback before I,
Oh,
fire
oh,
them or
oh,
whatever. But now that might not even be on the table. So do you fire them now? You know what I mean? Like, I think that it opens up everything, and I think that before our Monday Eagles recap, we should probably have the discussion: do you keep Brian Dable? Do you keep Joe Shane? I think that we have to have that talk before the Monday night episode, Tuesday morning release, because it may be old news by then. It's possible.
I think we have to have the season play out and see exactly where we are, where we're slotted. Because besides the fact of the scenarios, there's also a scenario of us trading up. And if they're in love
Sure.
with Cam Ward, just because all of a sudden we're drafting fourth, that doesn't necessarily mean
No,
it's
not at all.
over.
It's one of
Yeah,
the scenarios I outlined at the very beginning. Yeah.
and the thing is, I hate to use that cliche, but it's like, do you trust Shane to make a deal that makes sense? That doesn't put us in, future purgatory by just getting your guy at all costs.
Especially when you have no choice but to come to the negotiating table hat in hand.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. Our fly's been down now for 2 years. I mean, Hard Knocks exposed how that we wanted to trade up.
And I think Hard Knocks also exposed that Joe Shane is nervous. He didn't look calm, cool, and collected during that shit.
He looked like that young Jacksonville GM in draft day.
Yeah,
Remember,
you're
like he
not
was like,
wrong. Was that like Ethan Embry or something?
the guy, he was like pissing in his pants just because he didn't realize like how much time he had left to draft, like in the
Yeah,
pick.
and,
Like
and,
that's
and
what he looked like.
I'm not trying to shit on the guy, because I would not be any better under that circumstance. I can certainly relate to being like on edge during that whole situation, but you don't want to portray that to the, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't want that portrayed about me.
It's really go
You're
down as
gonna have to do the negotiating going forward. Like,
one of the, one of the dumbest things that's going to go down in this franchise in the last 15 years from a PR standpoint. Not the planes going around, not any of this other horseshit. allowing them to be on that show. It
Yeah,
really,
I agree.
it really opened a window into our soul, and it was not a pretty picture. From the fact that Mara looks like a blithering old man who's like,
Mr.
obviously
Burns.
Mr. Burns, who obviously, the comments about hey, he won't be able to sleep if we don't get Barkley, to like, do you say Shane, to Dable acting weird a little bit, and it's a bad move, and we knew it. We didn't want to be on that show for years.
So that's what's upcoming in the next couple of episodes. The Giants have one final game next week against the Philadelphia Eagles, a game in which no one wants to win. I guess it doesn't hurt the Eagles to win, right?
Doesn't hurt them to win, but
But
I
you're just
mean,
not going to play your starters.
of course not. I mean, if Hurts didn't play, if he's kind of not 100%, there's no point in playing him. Although, who knows? I mean, they're gonna have a bye, so right?
Yeah.
Do you want him not to play for 4 weeks before or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know, but I think it goes beyond Jalen Hurts. I think it goes to your wide receiver group. Do you put AJ Brown out there? Do you put Devonta Smith out there? You know what I mean? Do you put Saquon Barkley out there?
Well, here's the thing: if it was any other team,
I agree.
But something, they have such a hard on for us, and something, it's probably Barkley's call.
I was going to say they might put Barkley at quarterback.
I mean, that he could potentially break the record, and that's a big deal.
Yeah,
and
so?
That's a big deal. Sure.
I just feel like I don't care when you get a whole extra game to do it.
But I
mean, I understand, but
when Roger Maris broke, they had to put an asterisk, but it was still a big deal.
Yeah, I get it. Anyway, that's what's coming up for the upcoming weeks. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. Until next time, go Giants.
Go Giants.